Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to all of you to the last day of our emotional week, the day of the Toroid. Tomorrow begins the last week of our path, unconscious. So as you have seen, to speak about the unconscious, we have chosen the idea of the tree, because the tree of life is like a right way to see the shape of the unconscious with all its branches, its roots, and everything. So all this different variety of expressions. So this is why the shape of the tree is like the best way to see the unconscious. Many years ago, when I started to make my workshops and conferences explaining about the trinity of subconscious, unconscious, and conscious, related to the cosmic plan, the earth plan, or human plan. So these three different aspects that I was explaining. Besides all that, I used to end my conferences with the sentence that the only master that you could possibly follow in order to do it right is a tree. Because there is no better master like a tree. When you follow a tree, you will see that they know where they are. They stand still in their position here and now, with its roots grounded in the earth, but also expanding, looking for the light, absorbing the light to create food, and everything that they have to give, they just give it away to everyone in nature with unconditional love. So they don't speak, they don't teach, they act by example. And this is why, besides any masters and any name, any teachers like me or whoever, besides all of us, besides any spiritual being beyond this reality, the best example for a spiritual path is the master that we call tree. So, and that's the example of which we were talking about this week. So unconscious. When we listen the word unconscious, we usually relate this concept with something that is wrong, with a person that does bad things, that are not properly behaving. And the reason why is this is because unconscious is basically the opposite to conscious. Remember that conscious is a Latin word that means everything that is separated, put together. So con, all together, and scendere, that means to divide different parts. So to discern, basically, to discern is the idea of conscious. A person that is conscious is a person that actually realize or recognize the different parts and can understand the relation in between all of those parts, can get the idea, the point of all that. So that's someone that has conscious, that can understand the different parts. And the unconscious is, of course, the person that cannot discern, that cannot different or make a different differentiation. How do you say it? To to know, to realize about the difference between the parts. So that's someone that is unconscious, so doesn't know exactly how to understand the things, how to relate the things. Not always unconscious was a bad thing. We have to remember that in the past times, to be unconscious, to be unaware of things, was actually something normal, because most of the people had not the tools to understand the realities of the world. We were analphabet, mostly. So everyone had no clue of nothing. So that's why we wouldn't even say unconscious or unaware, because most of the people have no clue about anything. So that was the normal. But eventually, 500 years ago, 400 years ago, when the science starts to take place and the people started to find a way to understand the reality, and they started to study, to accumulate data, information, and start to discern beyond faith, going away from faith, when they started to figure out how the reality worked, they could start to make the difference in between a conscious person and an unconscious person, which would mean that someone that is unconscious is a person that has no tools to understand the things, that they have no clue about how to understand the reality. So they started to build, to create the idea that a conscious person is the one that understands the different parts of reality, and the unconscious person is the one that cannot do that. So eventually, with the pass of years, we could also say that someone that is unconscious does wrong things because they don't get how the things work. So they don't know how to do it properly. And that's why we started to create this idea that someone that is unconscious is someone that is doing bad things. Okay? So this is how the word unconscious turned out to be a synonym of a person that does something that is bad, something that is wrong. So eventually, in these past hundreds of years, came out a new science that was psychology. Remember that we spoke about this. Psychology is the study of the soul, psyche, which is soul in Greek. So with the study of psychology, even if the other sciences, they used to call psychology like a pseudo science, like they are not even a science itself. Even today, some people think that. But even though it was a very powerful study of the soul, a study of the mind. So the psychology, this new science, would take this concept of the unconscious and the conscious, but it would take it in a different way. Not saying that the conscious is the person that knows and the unconscious is the person that doesn't know, but the conscious and the unconscious lives together in one being. And the conscious defined the fact of all those things that we do, that we act by will, the things that we say we are willing to do, and we manage to make it. So that's the conscious, the one that can discern and understand the reality around. And all the other things that we don't understand, that we act by reaction, that we have no clue about them, they started to call it the unconscious. So the psychologists would make this difference between the conscious, as it is the action of will, that we are aware of that, and the unconscious, all those things that we have no clue how they work and how they are reacting. Okay, so that would be. So inside the unconscious, we can find not only things that we are hiding, but all the things that we are not aware of, that we have no clue what are they and how they work. It's a huge difference between the willing of doing something or realizing about something, which is the conscious, and all the things that we have no clue how to manage. So in the conscious, we actually know what are we doing, and the unconscious, we have no clue why they do all the things. So and all this goes from the biology of our being till the psychology of our being. So in biology, we have the autonomous nervous system, divided in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. We spoke about this in the month of Taurus, okay? Remember. So in psychology, we will have stress. Stress is how we measure the relaxation or the tension of a person, okay? So the psychology would be stress, and the stress will be divided or will receive its information from the unconscious and the subconscious, okay? So as in biology, we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic sending this information to the brain in the nervous system. The unconscious and subconscious will fill up with information our levels of stress, okay? So we can say that in biology and psychology, in both of them, we have no clue of how to manage to control these two systems. So if we take the biology way, for example, all of this, both sides are unconscious for us. Why? Because we have no control over how to manage these two things. They are things that just work by itself, and we have no clue how. And this is, for example, here, the heartbeat, the function of our kidneys, our intestines, the metabolism of our cells. We cannot manage that. We cannot control that. We cannot decide to make the heartbeat or not. It's impossible for us to handle that. So it is in our unconscious, because we have no clue about that working and how. And in the other hand, psychology. In psychology, for example, we cannot control who we fall in love with. We cannot control when we are disgusted by something. We cannot control willing to accomplish something or not wanted to do something. We cannot control that. That's something that naturally it's managed inside. So it's in our unconscious. We have no clue how to work with it. So a doctor or a biologist, even if they know exactly how a heart works or a cell works, we don't have the complete management of that organ. It's impossible for us to manage that, okay? We cannot change the metabolism or stop the heart by thinking, okay? So it is in our unconscious. So as you see, most of this controls our lives. We are unconscious about our bodies, unconscious about our soul. So there is a tiny little aspect that we can call the conscience. And this tiny little aspect of conscious is the one that can take the decision, for example, to say, I have a lot of stress, so I will go to a therapy or to make meditation. So it handles a tool, a way to find out how to manage this from the outside. And in the other way, in the biology, the conscious is the one that says, I have a conflict in my metabolism, so I will start to eat different, I will change my diet, so I can better handle this. So now let's go to understand something very important to make a big difference in what we think is the conscious. We usually believe that the conscious part is the one that has to control these parts of the unconscious to rule the whole game. And that's a mistake, because the conscious is not the one that controls. Someone that controls is a manipulator. It's not a conscious being, someone that controls other parts. A conscious being is the one that understands, that asks, that tries to find out what is happening in these two aspects of itself to see what they need in order to function. The conscious is not the one that controls the unconscious, it's the one that goes and tries to understand the unconscious in order to give to it what it needs. So usually in our point of view of some explanations about the unconscious and the conscious, usually what we think about is like this kind of horse, and we are the rider on the top of the horse, and we have to manage to ride the horse. And we call the horse unconscious, impulse, emotional. So emotional, impulse, unconscious. And the rider is the mind that pulls the conscious. So we usually believe that it's the conscious rider that has to pulse through the mind and control the impulse of the emotions in the unconscious, in this little horse. Isn't it? That's how we usually see this when we hear about explanations. And this is a very weird thing to say, because this explanation would say that there is someone that is taking the power upon someone else, which is really not how the conscious universe works. So when we see this perception here, and we listen these words of, we have to know to handle our emotions, to control our emotions, to control our impulses, to handle our unconscious. When we used to say these kind of things, to put control over something that we think that is not perfectly moving, so we are using exactly the same pattern as we have been using as humanity for thousands of years, which is the control upon others, which is a tool of religion, something that was useful in the fields, but it's not from the entire universe. So what a rider has to do is not to control the horse and be upon the horse. What the rider has to do is to feel the horse, to know the horse, to acknowledge what are the needs of the horse, what it feels, what it is feeling, what it is needing, to be one with the horse. And that's the moment when the horse will answer right to the rider. So it's not about controlling the emotion, it's about to acknowledge why I am feeling that emotion. And that's what we are going to understand now. So if you think about it, why do we naturalize the idea that to feel emotions, to feel impulse, and to live through the unconscious are bad things? Because we have naturalized this concept of we have to control impulses, we have to control emotional in order to connect with the spiritual. Why? And if we go to the past, we will know that the reason why is because of religion and culture. From thousands of years, we have been said that to go to the divine, we have to go up to the conscious realm, where everything is pulsed, where the mind of God exists. And where the mind is, there is no emotion, there is no impulses, there is no unconscious. We are all right, straight. So usually that point of view of religion has been inherited by many traditions in different philosophies, and it started to go on and on and on until it reached spirituality and it reached the New Age. So still today, some people are saying we have to control our impulses, we have to go beyond our emotions, we have to. Why? This is a tradition from religion. So that's why we used to say this one here has to control that one there because this is savage. But the question is why this is wild. So this, as everything, has a scale of measurement from the positive and the negative, or a balance and chaotic. We usually believe that this is chaotic by nature, like wild, but actually it's not like this. Actually, what happened is that because we hadn't been working with it or acknowledging it, it loses its axis. So it can't find a balance because it is chaotic. But because we weren't paying attention to it, that's why it loses control. So if we would have been paying attention to all of this and taking care of all of this, we would be in balance with all of this. But because we were hiding it, being afraid of it, so that turned into an imbalance and chaotic energy. The reason why this is unconscious or this is chaotic is because the rider didn't stop, got down off the horse and watch what were the needs of the horse. What was the horse needing, feeling? Maybe the horse was afraid or just in need of water. So if you would know and feel what the horse would need, so it would answer in a different way. The unconscious is not a bad thing. That conscious is just data, is a lot of data, information that we have been receiving for thousands of years and every day. So all this data, if we don't pay attention to it, if we just ignore that or hide that, or we put it hidden in the background of everything, so it will be chaotic, a mess. But if we pay attention to it, if we look into the needs that it has, how to organize that, to understand its nature, so all the unconscious starts to be useful for us, starts to be in our service. Our whole life is moved by the unconscious, because biology is unconscious, psychology is unconscious, everything is moved by the unconscious. All our life, every day, everything. So if we don't become aware of the importance of the unconscious in our life, the unconscious will control everything that we decide to do. And the horse will be very mad. So as you see, the universe doesn't have to control anything. The being that is conscious of itself doesn't have to control anyone. Just have to go down to acknowledge the other, to find about the other, and become one with it. Also remember this, that we usually divide these two as if they are different things. Like if they are just the body separated from the soul. Remember this, the mind projected the body. But this sentence is very important. The mind didn't create the body. The mind turned itself into the body. Turn itself into the body. It's very different, because otherwise we will still believe that there is a God and a created. And it's not two different things. The God is the created. The God became the created become God. It's the same thing. Okay? So the mind manifests itself in the body, and the body manifests in the mind. So remember this, the mind projects itself in the body, and the body projects itself in the mind. So the mind turns the body, it downloads information that is manifested in the body, and then the body sends information to the mind, receive information, give it to the mind, and the mind interprets that and delivers it back to the body. Remember that the mind puts ideas, and these ideas become reality. Why? Because the mind starts to manifest itself into the physical reality. So it creates the body in order to interpret the reality. The body now will assimilate all this information of the reality through the five senses. So the five senses are the mechanism of a physical body that will interpret the reality and send that information back to the mind. Send that information back to the mind. So once the five senses gave all this data to the mind will start to administrate all this information to understand this reality. So the mind will send a reaction to the body, so the body can turn that reaction into an action that will nourish the mind with a new point of view. Remember this, again, the mind, the brain with the neurons, creates a way in which it can perceive reality and project reality outside. And this reality will be lived by the body. And the body will experience that reality through five senses. The five senses will receive all the data from the reality and send it back to the brain in the mind, so all the information can be assimilated and understood in order to give a reaction, so the body can take action in that reality. And through that action, the mind can change its point of view of that reality. That's the perfect cycle that connects biology and psychology, feeding them one to another. This is why an emotion can become a disease. And through that disease, we can understand what happened to our being. So as a simple example, my inner self, it's feeling a lack of love, doesn't feel any love. So it needs the touch, the hugs of someone. So because I'm not getting it, the reaction would be something in my skin. So I will have a disease in my skin. Why I have a disease in my skin? Well, through the 5 senses, I can understand that skin is related to the touch. So it will send this action of the touch to the mind to interpret that I am in the need of a hug, because touch, skin, hug, love. Okay, so in order to understand all these relationships, you have to study and go to see biodecodification. Okay, so when you look into biodecodification, learn, read, figure it out, and you will see this connection of the power of the unconscious. So the last thing to say is that biology has been receiving information through thousands of years, and every second of our life, it stores data in our brain. So the brain starts to accumulate data, information for millions of data constantly, just in case we need them. So when we have to do something, to act into something, the first thing that our body does without us thinking about it is to check which one of the files matches with the action. So they say, oh, this one and that one, they match. So they are kind of the same to solve this problem. So they send this information into action. This is why we are between 80 to 90% controlled by our unconscious. But if we deny the unconscious, if we don't want to know anything about it, so we will be ruled by the unconscious, okay? Because it's basically the one that controls. But if we dare to see what is inside of it, to find out what are their needs, then we can use it in our favor. So remember, the conscious is the rider, the unconscious is the horse. So I don't have to control the horse in order to go wherever I want. I have to know, to acknowledge, to know all the needs and nature of this horse, so the horse accept me, become one with me, and we can both do what we aim to. Okay? So all this huge amounts of data, information is right there in our beloved unconscious. So be a forest. The vibration today is, the statement today is, I am eternal vibration.